put together a timeline from the horrific mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. Just after 2 yesterday morning, gunfire rang out at the club. Pulse immediately sent out an urgent Facebook message warning everyone to get out and keep running. A police standoff followed that was not over until 5 a.m. when a SWAT team arrived, entered the club, shot and killed the suspect in a exchange of gunfire. At 10 a.m., authorities identified the shooter as Omar Mateen. 3 hours later, about 1 p.m., President Obama addressed the attack from the White House, calling it an act of terror. This morning, investigators have started releasing the names of the victims as survivors are sharing their stories.
Hearing the first or two boom boom, but at the beginning with everybody, I guess we thought it was part of the music that was really loud.
So far, investigators have found no direct communication between Mateen and ISIS members overseas. But let's talk about that, bringing in Dr. Emran El-Badawi. He's the Associate Professor of Middle Eastern Studies from the University of Houston.
Yeah, he's also an expert on Islam. Sir, we appreciate your time, and thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure.
So obviously the situation that has unfolded is just tragic and sad all the way around. The motive remains under investigation. We still don't know. But the big question is whether or not these people were targeted. According to radical Islamic beliefs, homosexuality is considered a crime. So let's begin there.
Well, I share, of course, my condolences and horror with millions of Americans around the world today. And I begin by saying, of course, that the individual that we're talking about here, Mateen, the perpetrator, was himself homophobic. He was a domestic abuser, mentally unstable, and predisposed to committing a crime like this. And I think that it's important to start, as an academic, always I want to be as broad and as critical as possible, that we live in a society where homophobia is a problem, and that certain communities and certain individuals do struggle with issues more than others. And I think that in this case, this individual, of course, was predisposed to committing this crime, and it just happens incidentally that he comes from a Muslim background. That being said, of course, I would say that within the Islamic tradition, Jewish and Christian tradition, if we look at the Abrahamic theology as a whole, there is a problem with including homosexuals. They are typically excluded from salvation history. They're excluded from true salvation. So it is a problem that these communities are wrestling with, and in the 21st century should find some accommodation or a way out of.
So if the story bears out from investigators that while they were in communication with this man yesterday on the phone, and he says, I pledged my allegiance to ISIS in some fashion there, and we know from stories from the Middle East that ISIS has perpetrated all manner of horrific crimes against homosexuals in that part of the world. Is there a connection? Is there a carryover from these truly extraordinary and extremist views, and then bringing them home to our very own corners?
I would say that the context of this attack is a very American one. I mean, Mateen was born and raised in the U.S. He is an American, and I think that
to Afghan parents,
of course, and we don't know much more than that. Of course, the investigation is open.
Yes,
but the problem again of the treatment of homosexuals in a society, I think we need to look at the society itself. There is no evidence until now that ISIS is sending people from Iraq or Syria over here with a huge plot to kill people in a nightclub. The Orlando shooting in this respect is very similar to the San Bernardino shooting, where we basically had perpetrators who were already twisted and had some sort of violent mental illness and some predisposition to commit a crime, who later, as an afterthought, said, you know what, I declare my allegiance to ISIS. The question is, why would they do such a thing? And I think this has to do with the hype and the credibility and the kind of prestige that we have given ISIS, and that ISIS, of course, has maybe carved out for itself. It is now a brand that individuals who are twisted want to belong to. So that's a different kind of question. And the question is, how can we get out of this problem without typecasting too much? The problem of homophobia is worldwide. It is a problem certainly within Middle Eastern communities. It's a problem in the U.S., but this is very much an American problem.
You mentioned that we know very little about Mateen's background, but let's talk about Muslims and the religion before we let you go, because not only can you talk about the religion, but maybe some of the misconceptions.
Sure. Well, I mean, what I would like to say, of course, is that the teaching, the Islamic teaching when it comes to murder is clear, and it is in line with all the other traditions. And the mantra goes, if you kill one soul, it's as though you've killed all of humanity. And if you save one soul, it's as though you've saved all of humanity. This is something that is natural and people understand. But again, I always tell my students at U of H, war creates terrorism. And we have wars around the world that are perpetuating terrorism. And unfortunately, we reap we get the ripple effects of this, even thousands of miles away. But I would say that Muslims and America and Islam in America has been part of the narrative of this country since the very beginning, since the founding. The first leader to recognize the United States and George Washington was the King of Morocco. Through the Revolutionary War, the freeing of slaves, every major combat, Muslim Americans have fought and died for this country faithfully and patriotically. And Muslim Americans include heroes like Muhammad Ali, who died not 1 week ago and inspired the whole world with goodwill and brought us together. We shouldn't forget that. We need to build on that legacy. And it includes heroes who yesterday were standing in line for hours to give blood to the Orlando shooting victims while fasting during the month of Ramadan. So we should be inspired by the majority who live to the highest standards of Islam. And I will add one last thing, which is most important, that every single Muslim organization here in the U.S. has unequivocally and immediately condemned the Orlando shooting, including the Council of American Islamic Relations, Islamic Society of North America, Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, and those are the people that represent Islam in this country, and we should take what they say seriously.
We appreciate the insight, Dr. El-Badawi. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.